So that's usually a big one, is it's just too big for the brain to process and we don't know where to start.
So the big question is, what are top agents doing to absolutely crush it in real estate, grow their teams and add more transactions year over year while so many struggle? To get the answers, we interview top real estate agents to learn their secrets to success. Listen, we believe every agent should make a minimum of $100,000 per year, and we're on a mission to make this happen. We've already helped over 100 agents achieve this with our coaching. So if you want to fast track your business growth, get to your first $100,000 in GCI or add another $100,000 in GCI using social strategies, then head over to go.eliteagentsecrets.com, or you can just click the link in the description below. Also, just make sure to follow us, hit that subscribe button, and if you get any value from this at all, please tell a friend and leave us a review. My name is Andrew Dunn.
And my name is Peter Michael. Welcome to Elite Agent Secrets.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of Elite Agent Secrets. Today we've got Michelle Risi with us. She was a top 50 woman, or vote the top 50 women in Canadian real estate. She's been in real estate for over 20 years, helped grow one of Canada's largest real estate franchises. She's now the broker owner of Royal Lepage Connect Realty. She's got approximately 300 agents and staff. She's also a public speaker and an author for Forbes. We don't know where this woman gets the time, but she's on the show with us today. So make the most of the next hour because she's going to be dropping some fucking heat for you guys. We're going to be discussing things, how you can basically take action, how you can execute to get to your goals. We're going to be talking about reducing overwhelm, getting better alignment, and managing your mindset. We can't wait to jump in. Michelle, thanks for jumping on the show with us today. Today was obviously not my day for having a bit of a, when you burble your words, I'm like, gotta get all this out. This woman's like a superhuman.
I think maybe you're just a little bit nervous because of all the rap and the credentials that we have for Michelle today.
Oh gosh, no, not at all.
Got someone that comes on and I'm like, I'm just struggling to do one thing. She's there, got 300-person team, crushing out, I don't know how many millions in real estate, and a public speaker, and a writer, and basically everyone that's listening right now, you need to perk your ears up, get tuned in. It's time to fucking take notes. So Michelle, thanks for jumping on. We can't wait to unpack the last 20 years, and we're going to do it as fast and as efficiently as possible. You got about 5 minutes.
That's a lot to unpack, you guys. Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Andrew, for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh my God, this is going to be so fun. But before we dive into your topics, take us back to day one. Take us back to how all of this started and give us a little bit of context of what your first year looked like and why you even got into real estate.
Oh, this is a fun story. I will try and make it as concise as I can to be mindful of time. So long and short of it is that I was literally born and raised into the industry. So I was raised by two entrepreneurial parents. My dad was in home construction and development. My mom was in real estate. I'm the oldest of three kids. And so she got to a point where the sales for her didn't allow her to really be able to be with us as children in the way that she wanted to. So she made a decision to get involved in brokerage management and then down the road purchase her own brokerage. So I was always around the industry of real estate. In fact, my first part-time job was at the age of 13 in a real estate office. And I always say I had to lie about my age to get the job because 13 was not typically the qualified age to be working in an office environment. But I think I, always presented myself a little bit older than what I was. And it didn't help that, it helped actually that my mom was a part of that brokerage as a salesperson. So that was my first entry, was working on the front lines of reception in a real estate office. And I can tell you from that experience that I had no interest at all of getting into real estate. I knew, just looking at my mom and the amount of hours and the ups and downs that she dealt with, and then being in the office and really kind of getting a really intimate look, right, at other people's lives and the struggles and how hard it was. Now, this was way back before computers and internet and all of that. So things were, obviously done a little bit differently, but it was interesting to say the least and impactful enough that I was like, I will never get into real estate. And I did everything I could to do something completely different. And I did. I went on into teaching and then graduated with an undergrad in pre-med or kinesiology. So I really was like, I'm not getting into real estate. But the funny thing is, I always stayed in real estate. I always held a job in real estate, whether it was doing deal management, human resources, front reception. I pretty much worked every facet of a brokerage business. So that was my entry. My first year, so there did come a point, obviously, where I decided to get licensed. And it was really because I knew my goals and sights and my strengths are really working with people in a management capacity, being able to really help people, coach people, guide people. So I already knew that sales was probably not where I was going to stay. But of course, there's a necessity to have that on the ground, right? Feet on the ground experience. And so my first year of sales, thinking that I knew everything that I knew was going to make a difference, I completely tanked everything. It was, I struggled like everybody else. I remember sitting in front of course, back then we had the TVs with the VCRs, the VHS, and watching, real estate gurus like Mike Ferry and the Sweat Hogs, and trying to listen and learn to, how did they say that? And what was that objection handler? And needless to say, none of it felt like me. I literally felt like it was not, like I was an imposter in this world, and I did not belong, but I knew I had the skills. So I had to find, the pivotal moment for me was really being able to find my way of doing it, right? We get so caught up whenever we start something new of looking at, well, how does Peter do that? How does Andrew do that? Oh, let me try that way. And it really wasn't until I had to align myself with, who was I? How do I work best? How do I want to say this? That things really started to click for me.
So what was can you still remember your first year? Because your first year sounds like my first year in business too. I was like, I basically was very fortunate also. Not that I came from a family, but I kind of got a bit of a fast track. And like, I definitely had exposure that other people did not. 100%. And when I first got into business, I was like, this is going to be easy, man. Like, this is going to be a fucking cakewalk. Hello, millions. Like, walk in, and then first year, I was like, holy fuck.
Holy shit.
What have I done?
Exactly.
I was like, this isn't nearly as much. So do you still remember even roughly what your first year was, second year? Was it 1 deal, 2 deals? Was it 20 deals? Was it?
Oh gosh, I think it was 2 deals, and they were friends and family because I couldn't bring myself to get on the phones. I was really bumping into myself because very much like you, it was like, I can do this. Like, I've worked in the business. I've worked every capacity of the business.
Yeah.
I've got this.
And you're like, this is easy.
Yeah, no, it's not easy. It is not an easy job, but it's not hard, like it's not difficult. What's that saying, right? Like, it's not that it's unachievable, but it's really about managing the expectations and understanding that it's going to take you doing things that maybe aren't comfortable or don't feel natural yet. And it doesn't mean it has to stay that way.
100%. One of the things that I've always run into, and it's so interesting how you've touched on this, we find a lot of commonalities with a lot of top producers as well. It's that there is so many ways to do things, which is why we have this show, why we want to introduce everyone to different ways, different strategies to accomplish the same thing, because not everything's going to work for everybody. Right. We had Jay on, did cold calling expireds, did 4,000 deals in his career. Cold calling was his main, thing. Me and Peter, we use social. Like, that's our thing. We don't want to be door knocking. We don't want to be cold calling. We want to hit up Facebook, YouTube, whatnot. And that's how we prefer to do it. But they all work. This is one of the big things. It's like everything works. You've got to find out where you fit within this industry. Like, you kind of plug yourself in. So let's go from your first year, kind of walk us through even very quickly what your kind of trajectories looked like over the last 20 years from like year one to kind of where you are today. Because I know I want, if you're willing to share what you did in 2021 with regards volume, transactions, all that stuff. That'd be super interesting, I think, for our listeners, at what 300 agents and staff could do in a
Oh
year.
gosh, and I was totally not prepared for that, and I would have needed to pull stats, and I'll tell you why. Because I am so not a numbers person, and that was actually the first thing that I ran into. Right when you get into sales, there's a necessity to be really numbers focused and focused on how much you're moving the needle in your business, and I'm just not like that. I operate very intuitively, and oftentimes I do things, and then I look back, and I'm like, holy crap, I didn't realize how much I did, right? Like back to your thing, it's like, how do I do everything? I take action. That's what I'm really, really good at, is just taking action. So I don't give so much thought, but I can definitely pull the numbers for you. But let's kind of go, coming back to your question. My first year in real estate, like I said, was I think about 2 deals, and they were friends and family. And I made every mistake possible. Despite my knowing, that didn't translate into success and being able to apply it, right? We can know something, but it's our application of it. And I totally resonate with what you said there, Andrew. It's, everything works. You have to find the one that works for you, because it's the one that you do that's going to produce results.
Yeah.
And it kind of feels like the running theme through our conversation is about the ability to take action. My role is obviously very different now than what it was when it started. I own and operate a brokerage, so I don't actively sell. That would be very difficult to do, to manage a sales business and then manage, agents and a sales force to be able to go out and do their thing as well. But I can tell you from an overall numbers perspective, without having all the stats, that 2022, my gosh, 2020, 2021 through the pandemic, really saw some spikes in production. I've had agents that have had their best years ever during the pandemic, and I don't think anybody could have anticipated that. I think the housing market across the board seems to be relatively the same in most areas, that there's a shortage of listings and inventory, but prices have gone up. And so, I've had agents that have had their best years ever. So volume is definitely up there. But my role has changed for sure.
Now, I got a quick question for you, because your role has changed and you've been on both sides of the business. Why did you decide to get out of the sales business and get into the being a broker side? Because that's vastly different roles.
They are. And it was I think it was just a natural evolution. Our business, my mom's business, the family business, is what we were actually raised and grown up. And that turned out to be the largest franchise in Canada for Royal Lepage. Today that brokerage stands at 1,000 agents and 10 locations. Wow. And so that was the family business. That's what we all did. So brokerage management, brokerage operations was very natural for me. That's where we tended to focus most on. And that's where I really found I was able to shine. That's where my skills were better used. That's where I found the fulfillment and the joy. And so for me, it was just a natural fit that, we were always looking at ways of expanding, and an opportunity presented itself in another region, where a brokerage was looking to exit and create a succession plan of retirement. And so opportunity was there, and we purchased the brokerage, and that's where I now focus. So it was really driven around, it just felt like a natural evolution to what I enjoyed doing most and what I really found I was best at.
One of my questions to expand on that is, one of the things that we see, especially with high producing agents, solo agents, or agents, they get to a certain point, it can even be sort of 30, 50 deals a year. It's the whole trusting, letting go, like conundrum that they run into, where it's like, no one can do my job. No one can do it better than me. And I'm just wondering, is that something that you found did come naturally to you through kind of exposure, family business, that you knew that you could hand it off and you could find people that can do it better than you? Or was that still a process for you, that when you first let go tasks that you did, where they were getting done maybe incorrectly, mistakes were being made, that it was like a bitter pill? What was that process? Because I know we've done this a lot. We've spoken to a lot of people, a lot of listeners now, and this is something that really hits home a lot, because a lot of people are getting stuck when they're like producing solo, and they try and get a buyer's agent, they try and get a listing agent, they try and get admins, and it's like, I can't find anybody good, or they don't do it as good as I do, and these things come up. So how did you navigate that kind of challenge? Or any tips on that before we dive into your topics? This isn't even one of the topics. I just feel like someone with your experience can give a really unique perspective on essentially hiring a lot of people and running a huge organization.
Yeah, and it actually does tie in very nicely, Andrew, into some of the topics that we're going to talk about. But to answer your question, did I face that? Absolutely. The running joke in the brokerage was before I purchased and started operating my own brokerage, I ran a real estate academy. I started it with a small group of new agents. There was a need and a fit at the time, and it just eventually grew into a full service academy where we run programs and courses and offer coaching. And so that was my baby. And very much how as salespeople treat our businesses like babies, nobody can do it the way we do it. And so the joke was nobody was allowed near my baby. I couldn't, nobody was allowed to take over this task. I knew intuitively what I needed to do. And so I think it's such a natural thing for entrepreneurs to face, is that, when you're running your own business, you're doing it because it's a part of who you are. And so you invest everything in that. So it's very hard to separate and imagine that somebody could come in and do an even better job than you. And there's a bit of ego attached to that too, right? Because this is, it means something. And when there's meaning attached to it and it's important to us, it's not so easy to let go. But I knew, again, from the brokerage business that you can achieve success alone, but you're going to be capped. And if you want to get to that next level, it really is about aligning. And that's the word that I use to describe it. It's really about creating better alignment and understanding, where do I work best? Right. And focusing on that. I can't remember the name of the book right now, but they call it the Queen Bee rule. Right? The queen bee, her only job is to produce. That's it. And so she's not out there scouring and hunting and doing all of these. So they protect her job, her role. So it's really important as an entrepreneur to get to that next level, to identify, what is that queen bee role? Clockwork, that was the name of the book. So what is the queen bee role? What is my most important thing that I need to be focused on? Because yes, I can do everything else. And just because we can do everything doesn't mean we should. And so, I really had to do an audit on myself, on my business, and really look at where I wanted to go, and then bring in the right people in place. And I think that's what I do really well, is I understand people. I'm certified in disc analysis. So I have a really good handle on how to bring in people that those are their strengths. So yeah, definitely it's a common struggle for sure.
It's a challenge. Yeah,
I love that analogy too, because it is so relatable. That's one of the things that I'm kind of going through. It's like, what things do I let go of that should not be on my plate, that could be on somebody else's plate, so I can stay focused? What can I delegate? What can I get rid of?
Yeah, well, it's the whole decision matrix, right? Like, I call it an alignment audit. And this is what I do with, our agents, are really identifying, where are your strengths? Where's that zone of genius, and what things actually light you up and what things drain you? Because it's not so much about, production. It's about our energy as well. I can do things in my business, but I don't find enjoyment out of it. It drains me. So I feel exhausted. And then what impact does that have on the rest of all the other things that I need to do? So really kind of deciding, is this something that I need or should be doing? Does it fall within my wheelhouse and my strengths? And should I be delegating, automating, or getting rid of it?
Love that. It's totally true. Delegate, automate, or get rid of. It's kind of the rules. And I mean, listen, we've all got vulnerabilities. We've all got things we do and don't do well and drain us. Like, even for me, just for a second, then I'm going to get us stuck right in here, is like, for me, sales is one of them things. Like, I don't mind it. And I have done it. And I've always done all the initial sales for all of my companies, past, present, and future. But when I look at my calendar, I'm like, I've got 4 sales calls today. It's a bit like going to the gym for me. And I'm like, fuck, I've got 4 sales calls today, and I can't in the guts to get into my head. And I'm like waiting for them, and it just wrecks my day. Like, I could have 1 sales call, it's in the evening, the whole day I'm thinking about that fucking thing. And it's weird. It's definitely for selling certain things. Like, a lot of the times with let's say if we do coaching or consulting, and the people, they come from a different place. So it's a little bit different. It depends on what I'm selling. Because sometimes I love them because I'm like, holy shit, we're really going to help these people. Like and I really get like that actually gives me energy. I'm like, I'm looking forward to this because I know these guys are going to just get so much value from this, and they execute against it. I mean, one of the biggest things for anyone listening, if you ever think about getting a coach or you get a course or you have a mentor or anything, the best thing you can ever do for them is execute against what they said do. That is they don't need your thanks. They don't need anything else. If you just go back to them and said, I did what you told me to do and this is the result I got, they will be like, you're a fucking rock star. That's all we ever want. That is literally, because we know you'll get the result. It's just like a tiny percentage actually do it, which is aggravating.
Yes.
Anyway, this kind of rolls us into the big dome, let's call it, sphere of your talk today, which is about taking action. Your first topic, I need some help with this.
Count me in too, because I am literally thinking the same thing. Is how the hell do I reduce overwhelm?
This isn't a podcast. It's now a therapy session.
That's usually what it turns out to be, so I'm totally good with that. That's what I end up doing anyway, so it's all good.
Now, I always tell Andrew, it's like, hey, dude, I don't get overwhelmed, but at certain point, at certain times in this business, I will be the first one to admit
it's a lot.
There's a lot of overwhelm because there's so many moving components. And I think the reason why sometimes I get overwhelmed is because I can't control half the shit that's going wrong. Like, I'll give you guys an example. Right now, I have a transaction supposed to be closing Friday. 3 days before, we found out that the condo doesn't have the reserves and there's a litigation. This is the shit that's supposed to be like 4 weeks ago on our plates, not 3 or 4 days before closing. So needless to say that I'm a little bit overwhelmed knowing that my clients may not have a roof over their head in the next 2 weeks because these delays. Yes, I am having a little bit of a harder time because I take that shit personally. Like it's almost my fault, even though I know it had nothing to do with me. So lend us a little bit of a helping hand and a parachute, Michelle.
All right, let's do the therapy session. So let's kind of start by framing everything. You know, one of the things that I usually say to agents, because one of the questions I get asked most often is, you know, what do I do to make my business grow? Like what is the thing that I need to do? What's the magic pill? What's the secret? And the true secret, guys, is not about, you know, what strategy you're picking, because everything works, right? Like Andrew said, everything works. The one that you are going to do is the one that's going to produce results. So really then, when we take a look at what our competitive advantage is, meaning what's going to make me be more successful than the other people around me, is our ability to take action. That's it. You know, you can stay stuck in fear, you can stay stuck in overwhelm, you can stay stuck in trying to do everything on your own. But if you're going to hit that next level, you have to be able to differentiate yourself. And the way you do that is by your ability to take action on the right things. So in that's, you know, I always say our number one job is to figure out what is stopping us from taking action. Because if action is the thing that's going to get us to the goals and get us the results that we want and grow the business to the level that you want, then your only job is to figure out what's stopping you. That's it. It doesn't matter about new tools, new strategies, because everything works, right? We've already kind of established that. So if that's our number one job, then our coming back to then being able to figure out what is stopping us from taking action, there's three things. And the very first one, like you mentioned, was that overwhelm. So a lot of the ways in which I coach and teach agents through my programs is understanding the brain science, right? How are our brains wired to operate? And the one thing we know through neuroscience is that our brains are not wired for success. Despite that, that's what we want. That's not its primary job and focus. Its job is to keep us safe and to keep things efficient. So if we kind of just start there and understand that that is the brain's job, then we can get a better understanding of what happens in this overwhelmed state. So anytime we are confronted with a new situation or a situation, to your point, Peter, where you said, I take it personally, that state that you start taking it personally causes a sense of overwhelm, because now it's all about what you're making it mean. Oh my goodness, is this client going to hate me? Is it my fault? Is this going to jeopardize my business? I feel shitty. You know, all these things that start to come up and surface. So our emotional state can cause overwhelm depending on the meaning that we're placing to things. It can also be in the logistics of how we're structured to operate. You know, everybody's on this race to do more. And it's not about doing more, it's about doing the right things. And so when you take on too many things, that causes the safety switch in the brain to get activated. When that safety switch goes off, and we all have one, overwhelm sets in. And guess what overwhelm looks like? Procrastination. The brain is designed to keep you safe. So anytime you are confronted with something new, unfamiliar, that you feel is hard or challenging or impossible, your brain hits a state of overwhelm. The brain says, well, hold on a second, Michelle. Like, we're not doing this. Like, this is causing us to feel a little uneasy here. Let's do something else instead. And so we end up diverting our attention and getting involved in cleaning and organizing our desk instead of getting on the phone, or avoiding those sales calls, right? Or standing at our computer knowing we have to do this. And you guys are laughing, but it's true. You're standing.
So true. I'll be like, I've got all this work to do. I've never felt the urge to clean my room before, but cleaning the office sounds good today.
Right?
So I'm going to forget all the work and clean my office instead. Like, the thing that I couldn't imagine ever wanting to do, all of a sudden today sounds fucking brilliant.
Right? Yeah. It's just like, hey, my fridge needs cleaning. I haven't done it in 5 years, Like, all of these things start to show up as like, ooh, that's a great opportunity. Let me do that instead. And we don't realize why we do it. And when we understand that that's actually just the brain's mechanism of keeping us safe, because something in what is happening is causing a state of overwhelm. So it's really important for us to be able to take action, is to identify what things are causing us overwhelm. Are we doing too much? Are we not clear on what we're supposed to be doing? Is this a new task or a new role that we're taking on, and it just feels unfamiliar? So really being able to manage the overwhelm is critical for you to be able to take action, because those 4 sales calls are going to lead to future business. But if you're constantly dreading and resisting, then your energy changes, your focus changes, the way you show up changes, and then your ability to do more after that changes, because, like you said, you're drained, right? So it's not, those are just like a few examples. I mean, there's so many things that can cause us overwhelm. The way we think and feel about what we're doing matters. The amount of things we're doing, the amount of clarity we have on why we're supposed to be doing, right? That all question about why, like, what's your why? What's the purpose? So all of that, when you're not clear and your brain doesn't know why, overwhelm sets in. And what we're seeing right now, what I'm seeing right now, is forget general business overwhelm. Everybody is compounded with the effects of the pandemic, with the effects of financial strain, with the frustration of working with buyers and typing up your 100th offer and knowing it's not going to get accepted because there's no inventory out there and it's highly competitive. So all of these things keep tipping us into the state of overwhelm. And when we're there, we're not effective and we're not taking action.
What would you say? Do you have, I know we kind of touched on this, so you're probably going to be like, no, Andrew, you can fuck off. But do you have any kind of neat little tricks, I guess, or strategies, just even like a top little tip for people? It's like, if you're not sure what's overwhelming you, these are some of the things that you could maybe use or do to try and iron out which it is, whether it's planning a day, whether it's a list, whether it's like looking at, being honest with yourself. Because for me, it was always apparent. Like, I always knew, there's certain things I love. And although I can do the sales stuff, like I speak to, my other business partner as well about this, it's like, I can do it. It's not that I can't sell. Right. And it's a bit like, he can do other jobs. Like, we both run companies. He runs his own separate company, right? And he's like, I can do all that shit too. But he's like, I just get up and I'm like, oh my God, like, I just don't want to do it. Right. Yeah. And then I feel that about sales, which is why it's a good little marriage there. But what would you say something someone could do to either figure out what's overwhelming them, or maybe to try and overcome it, in your couple of minutes here?
Yeah, for sure. I know. I go deep dive in one of the programs that I teach, which I call Mindset to Millions, right? And that's really, I think it's really self-evident in the title of the course on what it is that we talk about and why I focus on it. But let's just even look at, okay, so awareness is a big one. So to answer your question, when you're not sure about what things are causing you overwhelm, that to me is a signal that you really haven't strengthened that awareness muscle, that you're working in your autopilot mechanism, which is very subconscious based, which is very habitual, right? We know we get up in the morning and we do what we do, and the day just progresses from there. In fact, this autopilot system, if ever you've gotten in your car and you've driven somewhere and you pull in the driveway and you're like, I don't even remember passing the school. Like, it just is so automatic that you weren't conscious or present to what you were actually doing and seeing. You stopped at the stop sign. You just don't remember stopping at it. That's autopilot. Now, our autopilot mechanism runs 90% of our daily actions and decision. Like, think about that. 90% of what we do on a daily basis is run from the subconscious brain, which means we're not consciously aware of the decisions that we're making and the actions that we're taking. So the very first step into identifying all of that is to really strengthen that level of awareness, being constantly checking in. How am I feeling in this moment? Oh, I just avoided this task, or, oh, I just noticed that I took a big sigh when I looked at my calendar and saw a sales, appointment in there. Really just noticing what you're feeling in the moment is the very first step to building awareness. But I think the best illustration of or tip that I can offer is, right now we're in January, and what's the number one biggest thing that agents are doing right now is business planning. Everybody's sitting down, looking at what they're going to do for the year ahead. And along with that comes a host of amazing ideas, right? We have no shortage as entrepreneurs of ideas on what we're going to do and what we're going to execute on this year. Now, our plans versus whether we do them are two very distinct things, right? And keeping in line with that action theme. But one of the strategies I can say is, if you are somebody that is an idea person, which a lot of entrepreneurs are, and you have a number of things that you want to do, like, oh, I'm going to, start creating more of a presence on YouTube because I hear that's a great strategy for lead generation, or I'm going to do whatever, this area in my business. Those goals, while they're great for business planning, are not great for the brain. The brain does not know what to do with them. So one of the easiest strategies I can give you to reduce overwhelm is, anytime you have a goal, you have to learn how to chunk it down. Because that goal of, I'm going to get, increase my business by 10 transactions this year, the brain goes, great, Michelle, how are we going to do it? Right? Like, what comes next? And that's what stops people. It could be as simple as, I'm going to hire an assistant this year, or I'm going to bring on a buyer's agent this year. Great. Tangible goal. It's measurable. You either doing it or you don't, but where do you start? And that's the part that we miss, is understanding that the brain needs the execution steps. It has to know where you want it to start. So being able to chunk down those goals, so writing it down and saying, well, what's the first thing I have to do? If I'm hiring an assistant, or bringing on a buyer's agent, the very first thing is, well, I need a list of candidates, so let me start there. But without that, I can tell you that most people would sit on that goal for 3 months, 4 months. Come June, they're going, damn, I knew I said I wanted to, bring on a buyer's agent, but I haven't even started. So it's the ability to start and take action. Remember, that's our number one job, is to figure out how we can stay in action. And it's about identifying what's stopping us. So that's usually a big one, is it's just too big for the brain to process, and we don't know where to start.
I love it. There's two people, besides you, Michelle, and all the listeners, there's two other people on this call. One is me, the other wonderful co-host over there, Peter. You've just subconsciously described both of us on each side of that coin there. Peter knows which one he is. The listeners will have figured this out at this point, because, you've listened to 100, like at this point, 150, 200 episodes of the show. One of us is very good at planning out exactly how we're going to get what we want out of this world. The other one kind of just flip-flops around.
The other one is very good at executing against that plan and staying on track. And we know who that one is. Because all the heavy lifting gets no credit.
Yeah. So we this is why our partnership works so well. This is where basically we fill each other's gaps, because we actually have meetings about this, because I cannot progress towards a goal. This is totally true for everyone listening, without knowing incremental steps to get there, because my brain just goes, I want to make $1 million this year. And it's like, how are you going to do that? And then you're like, people don't even think, okay, that's 83 grand a month. You work it out for everyone listening, it's 3 grand a day. If you want to make $1 million a year, you need to make 3 grand a day, give or take. And then you're like, so I want to make 3 grand a day. Well, if you want to do, for example, sell a home and it's a 6K commission, you need to sell a home every 2 days. Now start working out how many people you need to speak to, and you realize very, very quickly, basically fucking impossible alone. like, there is people that have done it. I'm not saying it's impossible. We've spoken with a couple of people that have done it on this show. Jess and Nick both did it solo, incredible agents, but like, you got to chunk down. Oh, and by the way, you might not have known this, but we've already helped over 100 agents cross over $100,000 per year and up in GCI with our predictable and scalable systems. So if you're interested in learning more about our courses and coaching to help you scale your business to 6 figures and beyond, then head over to go.eliteagentsecrets.com.